For some must push and some must pull as we go marching up the hill. So merrily on the way we go until we reach the valley. Oh.
This is Rocky Ridge. This is the first spine of Rocky Ridge. There's two spines of Rocky Ridge. This one, and then the one over there. The handcarts and the wagons, everything that went west, other than the very few parties that stayed on the south side of the Sweetwater, came over Rocky Ridge. This is, according to some historians, the highest point in the Mormon Trail. Others say it's Big Mountain, but they didn't go across the top of Big Mountain. But Big Mountain is higher than Rocky Ridge. It's 200 feet in extent. It goes up 200 feet from those willows to here. It was just 2 miles that we just traveled to here. The Willie Company made this march from here and then 10 miles further to Rock Creek. Took them 27 hours. We felt like that there should be a monument here to commemorate Rocky Ridge as well as those who struggled so much to get over it. William James, wherever William James, he struggled a lot right here. He had a shotgun from Scotland, and it was his prized possession, and he sat down and said, I can't go any further, and he gave some, Levi Savage, I think it was, his shotgun and said, give it to somebody else. And Levi Savage encouraged him to come on, and he made it as far as Rock Creek, but that's as far as he made it. This place is President Faust's favorite place, if you can believe that. He loves it up here. There's something about Rocky Ridge and President Faust. Those rocks right over there are where he was sitting when he was filmed for conference. And there was a great story about what happened that day, and let me just tell it to you because that day, the second rescue finally all came together for me. What happened was President Faust called me in the spring of 1990, either 6 or 7, anyway, and said that the first presidency was going to make a movie that was going to be showed at halftime in conference. That's what we call in between the sessions. And he said that President Hinckley was going to be at winter quarters, or Nauvoo, President Monson at winter quarters, and he wanted to be filmed at Rocky Ridge. So he said, would you take me up there again? And I said, oh, heavens, yeah, we'll take you up there. So whenever one of the first presidency come, there's lots of plans and lots of schedules and lots of things, and you never really know what's going to happen until it happens. And that day, that week, he called just before he was supposed to come, and he said, I can't come in an airplane anymore, and I can't drive because I don't have enough time, so I'm going to come in a helicopter. And I said, no kidding. He said, yeah. He said, would you get the film crew set up on Rocky Ridge the day before, and then I'll come the next day, but please come to Rocky Ridge because I want to see you. So I said, sure, President, I'll be there. So we got the film crew up here. It looked like a little city up here. There was TV vans and generators and computers and those big silver screen things that reflect the light and all this stuff all over everywhere up here. And I came up the next day, and I was just driving along in the Suburban on that dirt road where we came in, and I saw a helicopter fly off to the south. And I'm always late for everything, but that day I wasn't. I looked at my watch to make sure, and I wasn't late. So I just kept driving, and you know, as I told you last night, I've been doing this for a while, and my family has never begrudged a minute of it, even though all of my children can never remember when I wasn't in the stake presidency. They've never, ever complained. And my wife has only complained once. And that was when my son turned off the lights on the high councilman when he was talking in church. And then he turned them off again, and the high councilman said, well, President Lorimer's son thinks it's time to go home, so I guess we'll just quit here. And all she said was, why can't you come to church sometimes with us? And that's all she's ever done. And we've never begrudged a minute of it. To the contrary. It's been a great blessing to our family to be allowed to serve and to serve so long. But sometimes I really miss my family. And that day, I was really missing my wife. She's my very best friend. And as I was driving along and saw the helicopter fly by, I called her on the cell phone just to tell her that I missed her. And I kept going down the road, and all of a sudden, this helicopter flew right over the top of the Suburban, just, and it went down the road about 120 yards, maybe 200 yards, and spun around in the road and was just hovering there. And sitting in the front seat was the pilot, Dr. Goebel, and President James E. Faust. It was the wildest thing you've ever seen. And they landed off to the left side of the road, and President Faust opened the door and motioned me over, so I drove up there. And I stuck out my hand and said, "Welcome to Wyoming again." And he said, "President, could you take us to Rocky Ridge?" And I said, "Sure, it's right there." And he said, "Well, could you take us?" And I said, "Sure." So I went to get in the back of the helicopter, because we have one just like it. And he said, No. He says, "Don't get in the helicopter." He said, "You just drive, and we'll follow you." So I started driving my Suburban down that dirt road, and this helicopter was right behind us like this. And I'm not exaggerating. I could look in the rearview mirror of my Suburban and see the skids of that chopper right there. And if people would have saw us, they'd have thought we were making a movie or something. It was bizarre. Anyway, we got close to the Willie Rescue Site monument, and the helicopter flew off this way. And I thought, well, President knows where he's at now, and they'll go on up there. So I stopped at the Willie Rescue Site monument, because that's one of my favorite places. Just kind of remembered the good old days of building the monuments and our people and the work and the Willie people. And then I got back in the Suburban and drove up here. Well, when I got over there, where the road comes over the hill, there was all this massive TV cameras and things over here. And I just assumed that they were videoing President Faust. And so I stopped over there, because I didn't want the engine to be recorded on the TV stuff. And I sat over there for a while, and all of a sudden, about 15 people ran down this road and ran up there to where I was parked. And Bill Schaefermeyer of the audio-video department of the church started knocking on the window. So I rolled it down, and he said, "Where is he?" I said, "Where is who?" He said, "Where's President Faust?" I said, "He's with you guys." He said, "No, he's not." He said, "He was with you." And I said, "Yeah, but that was way back down the road." He said, "No, you stopped right there, and the helicopter was right above you." I said, "It wasn't either." He said, "Yes, it was." And he said, "If you'd have turned down your music in your Suburban, you could have heard them." And I said, "No, really. They left me way down there and came up here." And he said, "No." And all the film crew said, "Nope, they were right there, and the helicopter was right above you." I said, "Man, I don't know where he went." I said, "Maybe," and I couldn't tell them what we were doing, but we were just about ready to finalize the ranch deal. And I thought maybe President had gone over to Martin's Cove, because we were a little early. And I said, "Well, he went over to Martin's Cove to check that out maybe." And so that lasted for about half an hour. And I was up here with the film crew, and they were all getting worried, because President hadn't come. And they were starting to say things like, "Well, maybe they crashed." And I said, "They didn't crash." And they said, "Well, how do you know that?" And I said, "The Willie people won't let that happen. He's okay, and everything's going to work out fine." Well, he didn't come for an hour. And finally, a young man who looked like he just barely got home off a mission jumped on a four-wheeler right over there. And he said, "I'm going to go find him." And he revved that thing up. And I grabbed him by the arm just as he's starting to leave. I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." I said, "Have you ever been to Wyoming before?" And he said, "No, why do you ask?" And I said, "If that chopper's down somewhere, the only way you'll ever find it is from the air." I said, "But it's not down." And he says, well, if it's down and on fire, I'll see smoke.
Oh.
And I said, well, you're on the highest point anywhere around here. Do you see any smoke? He says, nope, but I'm going to go find him. So he went roaring down this hill on that four-wheeler and started up that way. And he got right to the crest of that hill. And it was the funniest thing you've ever seen. Because the chopper came right over the top of that hill and almost hit that kid. He bailed off that four-wheeler and it went down the drain over there. And when President Faust flew over right here, his eyes were about this big. Like, wow, what's going on? And as they flew by, they landed up here between the two spines of Rocky Ridge. And I just stayed down here to the monument because I wanted to stay out of the way. And I saw that there was somebody in the back seat of the helicopter. And I thought, well, that's neat. He went to Casper and got one of his grandkids. And then I thought, no, he got somebody at the ranch and brought them up here. I thought, well, that's really cool. And then something happened that changed my life and made me a different man. The helicopter landed, and the first thing that came over Rocky Ridge right here, standing on those rocks, was President James E. Faust. And he's a tall man anyway, but standing up that high above us, he was really tall. He didn't have his suit coat on, he had a white shirt and a tie. The pilot was carrying his coat, and he came over and stood up on those rocks and threw his arms up in the air like this and started screaming. And he was screaming, what he screamed was, he said, "Scott, look what I have for you." I thought there must be another Scott, but he was looking right at me. And he said it twice. The next thing that came over Rocky Ridge was my wife. He'd flown to Riverton and got her. He didn't know I was missing her that day. He'd become disoriented and needed somebody to bring him up here. He and the pilot both say that from there they couldn't see this. It wasn't circumstance, it was for me. I finally understood what the Willie people wanted. When he brought her over the hill, the thought came into my mind, someday, when I cross the veil for real, I'm going to meet a prophet. And it's not going to be James E. Faust. It's going to be Joseph Smith. Because he is the president of this dispensation. I hope he says to me, "Scott, look what I have for you," and that it's my family. I hope he doesn't say, "You didn't make it. You can't come with your family." A prophet of God brought me my wife to Rocky Ridge. I will never forget that. People ask the question, why were the Willie people out here? What in the world did they think they were doing? Why did Brigham Young allow these people to suffer? Well, that's why. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a failure. To the contrary, it was a magnificent success. Those people were here because somebody came and knocked on their door and told them that on the head of a boy prophet had been restored the fullness of the gospel, including the sealing keys, and that they could be together forever as families in the presence of God. That's why they were here. They weren't here because they couldn't make a living in Denmark and England. They weren't here because of religious persecution. They weren't here to get new land. They were here to be sealed. That's why they came to our stake and pled with us to go do their temple work. That day as I saw my wife with a prophet, I covenanted that I would live my life so that I would always be worthy of her, and that I would hopefully be able to be with her throughout all eternity, because that's all I have, is my wife and my children. I hope as you're here that you'll feel those same feelings of the Willie people. That's all they wanted. They didn't want anything else. They could make livings. They'd done so for hundreds of years. They wanted the sealing keys of the temple and were willing to give their lives so that some of them could have them. I think sometimes we take that for granted. We have temples at our disposal. We need to teach our children the importance of what it is the prophet Joseph restored. I bear you my testimony that those things are true. I've been blessed to have some wonderful, wonderful experiences, but none of them were as special and sacred to me as the day I saw my wife brought to me by a prophet. And I hope one day that I can shake Joseph Smith's hand and tell him thank you for what he's given me through his suffering and his sacrifice. And